Tress of the Emerald Sea was written by Brandon Sanderson and follows the spore-faring adventures of the titular character, Tress, on her quest to save the man she loves from an evil sorceress. Now that's just the basic elevator pitch. There's a lot more to it. This is actually taking place in Brandon Sanderson's wider Cosmere universe. If you are not familiar with that, I don't think it's actually super relevant because this one stands on its own. I personally haven't read anything by Brandon Sanderson that takes place within the Cosmere universe. All that I've read of him has been the works that he has done for Wheel of Time. Beyond that, I haven't read anything by him. It is on my list of things to do to read Mistborn this year. But as someone who has not read anything in the Cosmere universe, I think you can read Tress of the Emerald Sea and not miss out on much. There were definitely some parts of it where you think, like, I understand what's happening, but this is going to be like a lot more meaningful for fans and those who are in the know. But you don't feel like you're really missing out or losing anything from those moments. You may have noticed whenever I gave the quick little summary there that I said the spore-faring adventures, not the sea-faring adventures of Tress. That is because the main gimmick, I guess, of this particular story is that it takes place on a planet where all of the oceans are spores. The planet has several moons, and each moon rains down a different color spore. And each one is basically inert and harmless until it comes in contact with water, which essentially activates it, and whatever color the spore is determinant of what it does. For example, Tress of the Emerald Sea, so she lives in the verdant sea of green spores. Whenever the green spores come in contact with water, they sprout massive vines and can be very dangerous and deadly if you're close to them because they can get you real good. Now, one of my favorite things about this book that I noticed and that you pick up on really early is that it is very funny. The whole story is told in such a way that the narrator is their own character, and then you realize a bit later on that that is actually like literal, that the narrator is a character within the story. And he is so funny. The way that he describes things, the way that the prose is written is engaging, it is witty, it is funny. Every chapter there was something that made me laugh. I want to say even just within the first couple of pages I was already laughing because the way that they were talking about things was hilarious. There was a whole bit about how he was describing Tress, just, giving physical characteristics, and then made a note about how whenever men complimented her, they always compared her to, like, food, specifically whenever it comes to her hair. It was like people would say that her hair was like the color of honey or fresh wheat, something along those lines. And it just made a fun little side note of, like, some men have a tendency to compare women to food. These men have a hunger in them that should best be avoided. And I just thought that was funny. It was just a funny little line. And it's full of those. I think the characterization of Tress throughout the story is very well done because she's introduced as this unambitious, milquetoast, unadventurous individual who does not feel the need to leave her tiny island until the call of adventure, like, forces her out of her shell and forces her out into the world to go and be greater than she already is. Which really goes to show that some people just kind of need the right motivation. And sometimes that motivation is your lover getting kidnapped by a spore witch. We've all been there. But as she goes on this adventure, we really get to see her grow in self-confidence, ambition, that she never thought she wanted, never thought she needed. And now that she has gained these skills, she has grown a passion in life that she didn't know possible before, and it's really cool to see that growth of her character throughout the whole story. All of the characters are really fun. They each have their own little quirks about them that make them memorable. There is really nice growth throughout. Again, it's very funny, very engaging, and I highly recommend it. I do want to talk about some kind of light spoilers just to talk about what I think really elevated it for me personally. So if you think you already are interested in it, and don't want any of those light spoilers, skip to that time frame. And if you're okay with light spoilers, or you've already read the book and you just kind of want to hear my thoughts on some of the more in-depth aspects, stick around. So early on, Tress gets kidnapped by a band of pirates. And in that pirate crew, she quickly kind of becomes adopted into the pirate crew. Not really adopted into, more like kidnapped and then forced to work or die. It's a hostage situation. Not adopted, hostage. That was the word I was looking for. What I think really weaved in naturally through the story is the fact that Tress doesn't know a lot about how the spores work and about how sailing in this world works. So she knows basically what we know about this world going into it. So whenever she has a question, it's a question we might be asking. Whenever one of the more experienced characters on the ship is giving her information, they're giving us the information, and it feels really natural. And it's not like an info dump for the sake of an info dump. It is weaved in very naturally by having a main character that knows about as much of this world as we do, and that just really feels good because we get to learn the rules of this world along with the main character. And just on that topic of how things work and the world building, it really does feel like every single consequence of having a world like this, of spores that do different things, that interact with water, it really does feel like every little consequence of this world was thought of by Brandon. And like, it has hard set rules. You get answers to just about any question you might have about how it works. If you like hard magic systems, it's not really a magic system so much, but if you like world building and you like having the details of how a world works in a more fantastical setting, a lot of details in this that really makes it come to life and feels like a real place. I always love whenever they add in details like that make the world feel like it could be real. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the narrator becomes a character in his own right. We learned that this is a character we're essentially being told a story from the first person perspective the whole time of a character named Hoid. I think I'm saying that right. Hoid. 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 I don't know. Now, to my understanding, this is a character that is very important within the Cosmere. I think, again, haven't read anything from the Cosmere, so I don't know. All I know about Hoid is that he's a sorcerer, I think, of great import or of great power. I'm not quite sure. But we find out that prior to the event of this book, Hoid was cursed by the sorceress. And he has lost his senses. He's lost like 5 of his senses, like his sense of self, like, not your physical senses, but like his sense of self, his sense of decency, and stuff like that. That makes it seem like he is just a crazy person saying crazy things. But we are being told the story from him after the curse is broken. So, everything's being recounted. But whenever we see him do something within the story, and he's just like, I hear trombones in my sleep, or one other crazy thing he says, he always has like some witty little thing of just like, look, I'm not proud of how I was at the time. Okay, I'm not proud of how I was at the time. And it's just fun. It's a fun book. And I think it is really cool because we find out, he's cursed, which has caused him to lose all his senses. But, he's clearly telling us the story. And he seems fine now telling us the story. So we know that the curse gets broken. So knowing that kind of plants the seed of like, okay, how does it get broken? Are we going to see that? And just having that little foreshadowing, little Chekhov's gun situation, that has a really nice payoff at the end, I think. And as I mentioned earlier, the world building really feels like it takes into consideration all of the implications of having a world like this. And we see that Tress becomes the ship's sprouter. So surely, in this world of these spores that do crazy things, there are going to be people who research them and use them and learn all they can about them. These people are called sprouters. And Tress, just kind of by happenstance, mostly because, she needs the pirates to think that there is a reason to keep her around and keep her alive. So she basically takes on the role of being the ship's new sprouter. So she has to take on this role. And one of the cool things is, like, I think it was the blue spores. I don't have a good brain for details. I think it was the blue spores, but there's a type of spore where, you put some water on it and it turns into like a crystalline formation. And one of the ways that people have learned to use this, specifically sprouters have learned to use this, is if their ship gets damaged, they can basically use that crystalline spore to plug the hole. And that takes, practice and precision and knowing how much water to apply, because the more water you put onto it, the greater the reaction is going to be. So we have this whole arc of Tress taking the notes of the previous sprouter on the ship, and she really just dives into the topic. This is where we learn a lot about how the sprouts, or how the spores, actually work. And one of the things that I really like about this whole arc of her becoming the ship's sprouter is we get to see her go into like a flow state for the first time. Because as mentioned beforehand, she was listless, passionless, just kind of living life. But now she has found something that properly challenges her, engages her mind, and she basically gets into this flow state of researching spores. Sprout her researches spores. She gets into this flow state of researching the spores. And it is so cool. I always love seeing people who are passionate about something do the thing they're passionate about. And we get to see Tress really develop a passion for this type of research and just really dig into it. And I love seeing stuff like that. It was really cool to see this character who felt so bland get this spark and then just really propel herself to, like, I have a passion, I'm good at this, I like doing this is properly challenging me. And it was just really cool to see that development for her. So overall, I think that this book is just intensely fun, very funny, very likable characters, really well-written arcs. And there are several twists and turns throughout that had a few plot twists that I did not see coming. And oh man, it has a really good ending, really good final confrontation with the sorceress. Highly, highly recommend this. I'm probably going to reread it at some point once I do read the other Cosmere books that Brandon Sanderson has out. Probably going to give another read just to see what all I missed as someone who's not a Cosmere fan. Go back as a Cosmere fan and pick up on all those, because I do think that really has a lot of extra flair to it. Because I really do think that'll have a lot of extra flair to it. Not that I can pick up on that now, but just call it a sixth sense. Those are my thoughts on Tress of the Emerald Sea. If you've read it, let me know what you think about it. Will you be picking it up? Let me know down in those comments and get that conversation going. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.